The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and stale coffee, the kind of place where hope usually came to sit quietly and leave disappointed. Sunlight filtered through tall, dusty windows, cutting the room into sharp angles of light and shadow. At the defense table stood Marcus Hill, a 17-year-old black teenager in a borrowed blazer that didn't quite fit his shoulders. The sleeves stopped short of his wrists, as if even the clothes expected him to fail. Marcus kept his hands folded, just like his public defender had instructed. Don't react. Don't speak unless asked. Keep your eyes forward. He followed every rule, because boys like him learned early that rules were not suggestions. From the bench, Judge Eleanor Whitcomb peered down over her glasses. Her lips curled slightly, a half-smile that wasn't warm and wasn't kind. So, she said, drawing out the word, tapping her pen against the bench, you expect this court to believe you forgot you had stolen property in your backpack. A low murmur moved through the gallery. Marcus swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. The judge let out a soft laugh. Not loud, not enough to be obvious, but sharp enough to sting. How convenient, she replied. You young men always seem to have the same excuses. The words you young men hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt heat rise in his neck, but he didn't move. His mother sat behind him, hands clenched in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. She had told him before they came in, just get through it. Don't give them a reason. The prosecutor stood confidently. Your Honor, the defendant was found with the items and has prior disciplinary issues at school. This is a clear pattern. Judge Whitcomb nodded approvingly. A pattern, she repeated, as if tasting the word. Then she looked back at Marcus. Tell me, Marcus, do you think rules apply to you? A few people in the gallery chuckled. Quietly. Safely. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. I asked you a question, the judge pressed. Or is silence another one of your tactics? Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. No, ma'am. I believe rules apply to everyone. Judge Whitcomb raised an eyebrow. Do you? She leaned back, studying him. Because your record suggests otherwise. Skipping classes. Talking back to teachers. Now this. Her pen tapped again. Tap, tap. Each sound felt like a verdict. What no one in that courtroom knew, what no one suspected, was that Marcus Hill was not there by accident. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had been sitting in a nondescript office downtown, across from a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a calm, professional voice. On the wall behind her hung a simple plaque, State Bar Association, Ethics and Oversight Division. My name is Andrea Lewis, the woman had said. I'm an inspector. Marcus had stared at her, confused. I don't understand why I'm here. Andrea slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were transcripts, complaints, and internal reports, names blacked out, patterns highlighted. We are investigating systemic bias in courtroom conduct, she explained. Judicial demeanor. Language. Disparities in treatment. Marcus frowned. So why me? Because, Andrea said gently, you already exist in the space where bias shows itself most clearly. And because your school counselor recommended you as someone observant, composed, and brave. Marcus almost laughed at that last word. Andrea continued. This is voluntary. You can walk away right now. But if you agree, you would appear in court as yourself. No scripts. No provocation. We document everything. And if the judge treats me unfairly. Andrea met his eyes. Then we have evidence. Marcus had thought of his mother working double shifts. Of teachers assuming the worst. Of friends who'd been suspended while others got warnings. He thought of how tired he was of being quiet. I'll do it, he had said. Back in the courtroom, Judge Whitcomb sighed theatrically. Frankly, Mr. Hill, this court is tired of excuses. Society bends over backward for young people like you, and still. The public defender flinched. Marcus's mother looked up, eyes wide. The judge stopped herself just short of finishing the sentence, then waved a dismissive hand. I'm sure you understand my point. Marcus understood perfectly. She glanced at the file again. I'm considering remanding you for further review. Maybe some time to think about personal responsibility. Marcus felt his heart drop. This was exactly what Andrea had warned him about. The casual cruelty, the assumption of guilt, the language that never appeared in transcripts but lived in tone and timing. Your Honor, Marcus said carefully, may I ask a question? Judge Whitcomb smiled thinly. This isn't a debate club. I understand, Marcus replied. I just want to know, have you reviewed the security footage from the store? The prosecutor stiffened. Judge Whitcomb paused. That's irrelevant to the issue of possession. With respect, Marcus said, it shows the clerk putting the item into my bag by mistake. I told the officer that. Silence. The judge's smile faded. Are you instructing the court on evidence? No, ma'am, Marcus said. I'm asking if it was reviewed. Judge Whitcomb's eyes narrowed. Something in the room shifted, subtle, but real. She cleared her throat. We'll take a brief recess, she said abruptly. 5 minutes. Her gavel struck harder than necessary. As everyone stood, murmurs erupted. The prosecutor leaned toward the defender, whispering urgently. Marcus's mother grabbed his hand. You okay? She asked. He nodded, though his palms were slick with sweat. Across the room, unnoticed by most, a woman in a gray suit closed her notebook. Andrea Lewis had been sitting quietly in the gallery the entire time, recording every word, every pause, every inflection. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. The courtroom felt different after the recess, tenser, like the air had learned something it couldn't forget. Marcus sat back down at the defense table, shoulders squared, breathing slow just like Andrea had taught him. Stay present. Stay factual. Let them reveal themselves. His mother squeezed his hand once more before returning to her seat, whispering a prayer under her breath. Judge Eleanor Whitcomb re-entered briskly, robe swaying as she took her seat. Her face was composed now, professional, but the earlier edge hadn't disappeared, it had merely sharpened. Court is back in session, she announced. Let us proceed. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, after brief discussion, the state maintains its position. Possession was established, intent is irrelevant under statute. Objection, the public defender said suddenly, surprising even himself. Intent is relevant to sentencing discretion. Judge Whitcomb paused. Her gaze flicked between the two attorneys, then landed on Marcus. I will allow limited consideration. Andrea, seated in the second row, made a note. Allow, as if fairness were a favor. The judge folded her hands. Mr. Hill, I will ask again. Why were you carrying an item you didn't pay for? Marcus met her eyes. He did not flinch. Because it was placed in my bag by mistake. I noticed it later and panicked. A scoff escaped the judge before she could stop it. Panicked, she repeated. That seems to be a common emotion for you. Andrea's pen stopped mid-sentence. Your Honor, Marcus said carefully, may I ask why that emotion seems suspicious to you? A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Whitcomb stiffened. You are bordering on contempt. I'm trying to understand, Marcus replied. Because when other people panic, it's called fear. When I panic, it's treated like guilt. Silence fell, heavy, uncomfortable. The judge's jaw tightened. You're making assumptions. No, ma'am, Marcus said. I'm responding to how I'm being spoken to. The public defender looked like he might faint. The prosecutor shifted uneasily. Andrea's heart thudded, not with fear, but with grim confirmation. There it is. Judge Whitcomb leaned forward. Young man, you would do well to remember where you are. I know where I am, Marcus said. I just don't know why it feels like I've already been sentenced. That did it. Enough, the judge snapped. This court does not tolerate attitude. And does it tolerate bias? A calm voice asked from the gallery. Every head turned. Andrea Lewis stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not rush. She simply stepped into the open space and spoke with the kind of authority that didn't need permission. My name is Andrea Lewis, she said. Inspector, State Bar Association. Ethics and Oversight Division. The room froze. Judge Whitcomb blinked. I'm sorry, what is the meaning of this? Andrea held up her identification. This proceeding is part of an active evaluation of courtroom conduct. Mr. Hill is a voluntary participant in a judicial bias assessment. Gasps broke out. Marcus's mother pressed a hand to her mouth. The prosecutor's face drained of color. Judge Whitcomb's voice sharpened. This is highly irregular. On the contrary, Andrea replied evenly. It is authorized under Rule 14b. You were notified that this court was subject to random evaluation this quarter. Judge Whitcomb hesitated, just a fraction too long. Andrea continued, everything said in this courtroom today has been recorded, transcribed, and compared against established standards of judicial conduct. The judge straightened. I have conducted myself appropriately. Andrea tilted her head slightly. Then there should be no concern. A pause. Andrea turned to the gallery. For the record, Judge Whitcomb repeatedly used generalized language, implied character judgments unrelated to the charge, and demonstrated differential tone inconsistent with neutrality. Judge Whitcomb's face flushed. This is outrageous. Bias rarely announces itself, Andrea said. It appears in patterns, interruptions, assumptions, dismissive phrasing. We document those patterns. Marcus sat silently now, heart pounding, not from fear, but from something dangerously close to relief. The judge took a breath, visibly recalibrating. Very well, she said stiffly. Proceed. Andrea looked at Marcus. Mr. Hill, one final question. How have you felt during this hearing? Marcus swallowed. This was the hardest part. I felt like I had to prove I deserved respect, he said quietly. Before I even got to prove I was innocent. The words landed harder than any accusation. Andrea nodded, then turned back to the bench. Thank you. She returned to her seat. The room buzzed, everyone suddenly aware that history, not routine, was unfolding. Judge Whitcomb cleared her throat. Given recent developments, I will review the security footage. The video played. The clerk's careless motion. The item sliding into Marcus's bag. Marcus pausing, looking confused. The officer approaching before Marcus could speak. Undeniable. Judge Whitcomb watched without expression. When it ended, she exhaled slowly. The charge is dismissed, she said. Due to lack of intent. Marcus's mother burst into tears. But Andrea did not smile. Before we adjourn, Andrea said, standing once more, the evaluation remains ongoing. Judge Whitcomb stiffened. The case is resolved. The case, Andrea replied, yes. The conduct is not. She addressed the courtroom. This assessment will be forwarded to the Judicial Review Board. Recommendations may include mandatory bias training, monitoring, or further disciplinary action. The judge's hands tightened on the bench. Court was adjourned, but consequences had only begun. Outside, sunlight felt different. Brighter. Honest. Marcus stepped onto the courthouse steps, his mother hugging him fiercely. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know you were carrying all that. Marcus looked back through the glass doors at the courtroom beyond. Neither did they, he said. That was the problem. Andrea joined them, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You did something important today. Marcus nodded slowly. I just told the truth. Andrea smiled. Sometimes that's the most dangerous thing you can do. As they walked away, the courthouse loomed behind them, not as a symbol of justice fulfilled, but of justice tested.